Before we begin, I'd like to give a shout out to my friend Trash Execution, who has recently uploaded a phenomenal tutorial video from Morrigan on his channel. He is a very entertaining and highly talented person and well deserving of a follow. Link will be in the description. Hi everyone, Ryusta here, and I wanted to do a video regarding the character Servbot in Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Servbot is a character I've played for years, and in the past couple of years in particular, he's been the subject of heavy focus for me in both casual matches and tournament play. Because of this, I wanted to take some time to offer some of my opinions about the character, my experiences playing with him, and as possibly the only Servbot main playing the game, I'd like to hopefully answer the question that hovers over all of it. Is Servbot really a bad character? I also intend to release a more in-depth tutorial on the character, detailing his various tools, abilities, and team strategies in depth. So in a manner of speaking, I'm sort of testing the waters with this video somewhat. I hope you'll enjoy the commentary as well as the match footage in the background from various sets. Now please keep in mind, I'm not any sort of top-level player or anything, so please don't take my thoughts and opinions as gospel. These are just some of my semi-competitive experiences and opinions regarding the character I love to play. A character I want to share my love of. So, let's begin. And to do so, we'll start by explaining briefly who Servbot is. Servbot is a diminutive robot pirate from the Mega Man Legends series. He is one of 41 special semi-indestructible robotic servants working for Tron Bonne. Though they do perform criminal acts on occasion at the behest of Tron, they actually have a very innocent and pure heart, holding no grudges and being very eager to please both enemies and friends alike. Though they're very childish and easily frightened, they have been known to show great bravery and initiative in times of crisis, particularly when protecting their creator and her family. In Marvel vs. Capcom 2, Servbot is considered an extremely low-tier character, second only to Roll as being considered the worst character in the game. This is due to a myriad of factors, most notably being that he takes the most damage and does the least damage in return out of every character. And yet, he's not considered to be without advantages. The most well-known of these advantages being his extremely tiny size and his ability to do a lot of chipping damage with one hyper combo. So that begs the question, has Servbot been misjudged? Is Servbot truly a bad character, or is there something more to this tiny little guy? Let's get the obvious part out of the way first. Servbot is a character of astonishingly harsh weaknesses. In a game where multiple characters can remove an entire life bar in one or two interactions, Servbot's best meterless combos do mere pixels of damage. In addition, Servbot has the lowest vitality in the game, taking 37% extra damage from all attacks, a trait shared only with Akuma, Bone-Clawed Wolverine, and Roll. This means that one solid hit from a powerful super move or combo will basically put him at critical health. Servbot's special moves are nothing to write home about either. They have some uses, but tend to have very little combo potential and damage. They also tend to be a little slow on the startup and or end lag. Servbot also has an odd trait unique to him among the entire cast. When you choose which assist mode you use for him, you are also choosing one of the 3 hyper combos he has access to. Meaning, Servbot is unable to use either of the other assist's hyper combos. The only shared hyper combo between the 3 modes is King Servbot, which can best be summed up as situational. If that weren't enough, only one of his hyper combos is generally considered noteworthy, his Gamma Assist Super Servbot Rush. And for what it's worth, that is one thing I very much agree with the consensus on. For the intents and purposes of this character overview, I'm going to be focusing mostly on his Gamma Assist and Super. That being said, his Alpha Assist Super, Lunch Rush, is generally the most damaging of the 3 options if landed completely, and can have some niche setups in addition to having a much more useful attack for the assist itself. There is some potential benefit in certain situations, and I definitely dabble with it on occasion here and there. Even so, generally speaking, the hyper combo requires more precision along with more specific setups to take full advantage of. It's very possible more tech will come out for this super at some point, but for now, I consider it more of a niche option. And the less said about his beta super, helicopter drop, the better. At least for now. While there are some fun niche uses for this, such as an awesome 100% combo video from Vidness, it is simply too limited and punishing to be considered valuable as a standard option. So that is another weakness of his, a lack of hyper combo variety. Even so, that in and of itself isn't exactly a unique weakness, especially when you consider that some other characters only have 1 or 2 supers entirely that cannot be swapped out. But just the same, I felt it was something worth mentioning. So that's it, right? Open and shut case. Servbot takes the most damage, does the least damage, and doesn't have much utility in terms of his special moves and supers. Well, not exactly. In a vacuum, these weaknesses are utterly and totally crippling, giving him very little chance of going head-to-head with any other member of the cast. But that's just it. Marvel vs. Capcom 2 isn't a one-on-one fighting game, and Servbot is a part of a team of 3 characters. He's got 2 partners that can shore up his weaknesses while giving him the ability to play to his strengths. And in some ways, Servbot being a team player is thematically fitting for the little guy. So let me begin this section by asking you all another question. What are Servbot's best attributes? What are his strengths and how do they uniquely contribute to a team? Well, to begin with the ones I mentioned before, Servbot is absurdly tiny. He is genuinely the smallest unmodified 2D fighting game character in history. He can literally dodge several attacks by doing absolutely nothing. This is nothing to scoff at because it limits the options that many opponents have for doing damage to him. And because those options are limited, there are fewer to choose from, and thus the very nature of the encounter will be more predictable by default. Options are one of the most important things to have in a fighting game because it gives you more routes to achieve your end goals and makes it that much more difficult for your opponent to prevent you from doing so. And of course, Servbot is also known for being able to use his super to do a lot of block damage to opponents as well. And in addition to that, he will do almost no red life damage even if his attacks do hit. This might not seem like a big deal, but it really does add up. It effectively means that whatever damage Servbot does stays done, even if they tag out afterwards. No recovering HP. This reduces the effectiveness of character swapping against him and helps Servbot to finish off his low health enemies. Note that this obviously does not apply when attacking enemy assists, of course, so there is something to be said for using an assist as a human shield against Servbot sometimes, as they will still be able to heal again. But that leads me back to my previous question. Are those Servbot's best attributes? Well, yes and no. While they are very good aspects of the character that can't be taken for granted, they're also not quite the full picture either. If that was all there was to it, then just playing him would be enough to get some effectiveness out of the deal. But the fact is, those aspects are considered gimmicks more than anything else. Gimmicks that an experienced player can and will circumvent and punish. So there has to be something else. See, Marvel is a game where gimmicks alone generally only get you so far. Even really powerful gimmicks like Air Hyper Viper Beam won't single-handedly carry you to a win on its own against someone competent who understands the options you have and does the best to minimize those options. You still need to have substance to your character and your approach, no matter who that character is. Now don't get me wrong, gimmicks are a very important aspect and should not be neglected, but they aren't the solution to every problem. Which is where I feel a lot of people tend to fall short in a fighting game against more experienced players, relying on gimmicks and then having nothing left when those gimmicks are figured out. People are people. People learn. And when someone has spent literal decades playing a game, chances are they figured out how to quickly adapt to even the few things they haven't experienced yet. In other words, you can't count on someone simply not understanding the matchup in order to give yourself wins when you're playing against people that have the experience and the presence of mind to figure things out. So if that's not all there is to the story, what are Servbot's other good attributes? Well, the first is his ground speed. See, his size alone isn't enough to make him a threat. You also need the speed to use that size. To put it another way, it's a lot easier to swat a fly that's sitting in one place than it is to catch one flying around your head. To play as Servbot, you need to be the latter. You need the ability to weave in and out, to be ambiguous, and to be confusing. And while he's a little lacking in air approaches, on the ground he is extremely potent. Which leads to his second most important attribute, ambiguity. Or more specifically, his mix-ups. Servbot's high-low game is absolutely devastating if you're not able to keep him out. When he's up close, he has the ability to attack either high or low, and because Servbot has an instant overhead, this forces the opponent to take a guess on which direction to block. They can't simply react, they have to guess. And when you factor in Servbot's assists, which are the real source of damage to these exchanges, the cost of these rapid-fire guessing games begins to add up very quickly. So why not just jump into the air? That way you don't have to guess on the high-low. Well, there's some problems with that too. First, you have to remember that this is Servbot you're talking about. You're already limited on the attacks that hit him when you're on the ground, so imagine how few options are available when you're in the air. Second, it's more difficult to get a solid punish on assist characters when you're in the air for the most part. As such, it gives Servbot more freedom to call out anti-airs and move in without reprisal. What's more, super jumping, or even just moving the screen upward a tiny bit, means you literally can't see what side of you he's going to be on when you land. All you have is the somewhat ambiguous indicator arrow to pinpoint his location. The character has to come down sometime, and when they do, they can potentially trade a high-low mix-up for a left-right one. And that leads me to the final attribute Servbot uses best, teamwork. As I mentioned, Servbot is a very thematic character. On his own, he is weak, frail, and helpless, just like in the games they come from. But Servbots work best as a team, and this is a team game. And because of that, Servbot is able to use the previous two attributes to open up enemies and let his assists and supers do the lion's share of damage. To go back to my previous analogy, it's like trying to swat a fly out of the air while someone is consistently coming in to punch you in the face. Your goal as Servbot is not just to be small and annoying. It's far more insidious than that. Your goal is to find ways to open up your opponent by finding breaks in their defenses, using your size and speed to move around past the opponent's attacks, and using your assists and supers to break them down. Of course, you're weak and frail, so just as importantly, your job is to know what attacks can hit you, when to expect them, and how not to get caught and punished for playing your game. In a lot of ways, I think Servbot is a character without precedent. Simply put, there's just no one else like him, either in this or virtually any other fighting game before or since. There's just no one to compare him to. I feel like one of the main reasons Servbot is overlooked is because people try to use him the way they try to use other characters. Servbot can't be any other character. He can only be Servbot. But at the same time, no other character can be Servbot, and no other character can fight in the exact same way he does. His game plan is absolutely unique, and his abilities and attributes simply aren't something anyone else can fully duplicate on their own. Servbot wins by being Servbot and no one else. By not trying to shove a square peg in a round hole, you can allow him to be the character he is instead of being a bad version of someone else. And that has always been the key for me. The way Servbot gets most of his damage isn't by direct fighting, it's by creating openings and exploiting predictable enemy retaliations using strong assists and or combos. And the predictability of those retaliations does not come from the opponent being poorly played or predictable, but rather because Servbot's size itself limits the options that the opponent can even choose from. Remember what I said before, using a tactic because you don't expect the enemy to know how to react is a gimmick. Understand the counters to what you do as well as the counter to those counters. That is the difference between a tactic and a gimmick when playing someone more experienced. And that brings me to the most important lesson regarding what it takes for Servbot to be useful. You need to be absolutely fearless. You need to do the one thing that someone won't expect from the weakest and most frail character in the game. You bring the fight to them. You need to stand toe-to-toe with everyone bigger than you and fight without hesitation. You need to know what you're about and not shy away from it. You need to be a force of struggle and confusion and keep the enemy from feeling comfortable and finding their rhythm in order to play the game they want to play. And Servbot is the character that will do that. This isn't an ironic countermeasure or a simple mind game either. Far from it. This is in fact the smartest and most tactical approach you can make. This is because you're not playing to overwhelm your opponent with power like a Magneto or a Sentinel would. You're aiming to make yourself more unpredictable and make the opponent have very few answers that even work to handle you. Remember, a great many attacks simply won't hit Servbot, and when he's right next to you, that number can be even more limited. Not only that, but because Servbot is already so tiny and hard to read, him being up close to the opponent allows for really challenging high-low mix-ups. Servbot's low pokes are very solid, and on top of that he has the instant overhead I mentioned before, making any ground encounter with him a 50-50 mix-up every time. And because both of these attacks will open the opponent up for the assist, all while building meter, he can create an incredibly frustrating scenario for the opponent trying to get away, which in turn adds to their predictability, allows Servbot an opening to build and use meter, and further helps him to cut even the biggest threats down to size. To summarize, your overall game plan as Servbot should be to stay in the opponent's face, limit their options, break their defense through a severe high-low mix-up games and corner pressure, and use assists and supers to get the actual damage done. Keeping your assists safe and observing what the opponent can and can't do to you in a given moment will be key to your pressure game. In terms of mobility, use your extremely potent ground dashes to close the gap while being prepared to block out of them in the event that an assist is called or a fast, powerful attack from the opponent comes your way. Against a lot of supers, including Air Hyper Viper Beam, Servbot can actually buffer out a block during the super freeze, so that will help you a lot when moving in. There are some supers that don't allow for this, but they are actually pretty rare. Don't become too concerned if your opponent is able to avoid your Servbot Rush super lockdowns. High mobility characters played by experienced players will be able to give you the slip given even a slight opening. It's what makes that aspect of Servbot's kit a gimmick and not the complete strategy in and of itself. It's a tool for the tool chest that might or might not be the correct one for the job. You need to keep in mind when it's a good idea to try it and when it's better to hold on to the bar instead. If you don't land the super, simply return to the pressure game while keeping track of the respective life bars of the point characters. Remember that fast, in-your-face fighting is not mutually exclusive to patience and careful observation. Servbot has the luxury of being able to do both at the same time. And that's the other thing. When it comes to Servbot's life bar, try not to panic if you take a couple of big hits and are really low on HP. Servbot's already a very frail character to begin with, and one that is based on dodging and pressure. So the difference between 100% HP and 30% HP is honestly not that big. Remember that they can't kill you if they can't hit you. Many is the time I've soldiered forward on a few pixels with Servbot and managed to turn the tide simply because I was able to be confident that nothing had significantly changed. Fearlessness really is key, so keep moving fast and take advantage of your size. Be the bravest Servbot possible, and show no fear even in the face of insurmountable odds. That is simply what Servbots do. Now that being said, That isn't the same thing as playing carelessly or incautiously. Remember that bravery is not the same thing as recklessness. You still need to understand the fundamentals of protecting both yourself and your assists, even when you're playing an aggressive approach. Just ask any Magneto player and they will tell you the same. If your opponent is starting to bait you in and look for assist counter calls instead of trying to take the initiative, feel free to back off as well and play more patiently and reserved. Build a bit of meter, weave in and out, see if you can bait them into making the first move, or if you can build some meter, pressure them with supers. Just use whatever options might be available. You have the speed, you have the size, and the ability to use them. Play intelligently and respectfully of what your opponent is capable of. Don't just take any one single approach for everything. That goes for whether you use Servbot or any other character. Have respect for the fact that you are playing a thinking person that doesn't want you to do what you're doing. People adapt. Count on those adaptations. Let those adaptations challenge you and make you think about what you're doing. Learn from those things and learn from their style. And if you don't see anything in the moment, watch your matches back and see what did work, what didn't work, and more importantly, why. Whether you play Servbot or anyone else, that is one of the most important pieces of advice I can give you. Do your best, take stock of what happened to cause losses, dust yourself off, and push forward again. That isn't just the Servbot way, that's the Marvel vs. Capcom 2 way. So, with all of that being said, we come full circle and return to that original question. Is Servbot truly a bad character? And the honest answer is, I don't know. And more importantly, I don't really think it matters. That was the lesson it took me many years and lots of experience to understand. I truly feel that as I've gotten older, wiser, and more experienced, I've begun to care less and less on if Servbot is good or bad. It's not about making a statement by playing Servbot. I'm playing a character that I love and I feel like I can be creative and have fun with while still being an effective player. And that's what it truly comes down to for me. Whether Servbot is dead weight on my team with no real benefit, or a hidden god of the game with limitless potential, it truly doesn't matter in the slightest to me. Servbot is my character, and there is no one else I'd rather have on my team to push myself further than him. Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is my all-time favorite fighting game, and Servbot is one of the characters that I use to express that love and try things that I consider unique and exciting. Ultimately, what matters most to me is being respectful and respectable. If my contributions to this game end up bumping him up in people's estimation, then I am honored. And if not, he's still my little character, and I feel great joy from what I've been able to do with him. Whether I win big or not, whether I push the meta or not, I'll continue to play him, knowing I gave it my best shot using the tools I most wanted to use. I don't have any idea if Servbot will one day reinvent the meta. If I were to bet money on it, I kinda doubt it. But then again, who knows? While he might not reshape the way the game is played, there might just be a little place for him in there somewhere. After all, he doesn't take up too much room. Anyway guys, that was a brief overview of my thoughts and feelings regarding Servbot as a character. Please let me know what you think in the comments below. If you'd like to see more content about this character or anything else, I'd be very happy to oblige. Either way, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys again soon.